For those of us in the industry, there's just one word to describe this, and it's wow.
The changes taking place in television today are revolutionary. They're as great as the changes that took place years ago, 1950, when television first came on the scene.
The television set is going to become the tool of the viewer in the future. By the end of this decade, people are going to learn to use their television set to make their own selections, to control their own leisure time, their own viewing patterns.
Before, you've had to look at the clock before you've looked at the TV set. Is it time for that movie to start? Is the news going to be on now? Might the weathercast be about to come on? Now, whenever you want any one of the multiplicity of things that you get from television, it'll be there when you turn the dial.
We live in an age of television, but before we can understand the age in which we live, we have to understand television. Television is very different from other media. It's not like books, it's not even like films. Books and films and all previous media have been used selectively. People would pick and choose. Television is more like a tribal religion. It's a ritual.
I think that television, so far as entertainment is concerned, has been aptly called chewing gum for the eyes.
When all is said and done, people are likely to be paying, and just really by 1985 or 1986, $50 or $60 a month for cable services, not even $100 a month.
The new technologies that are coming online, they're only starting. They're the opening bars of a symphony which yet has to play itself out.
The tune? The singing out of the cable television wire. Stringing its way across America, it is the symbol of the new age of television. An era that promises to restructure the customs of our culture and the patterns of our lives. We are truly entering the new age of television. But it was not so very long ago we entered the first age of television. Back then, headlines read, "Limitless Horizons Seen for Television," and "TV, the End to Conversation." It was a simple relationship. Networks provided programs, and viewers watched.
Me, ray, 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 ray. No, so middle life, take it away. The night is young, the skies are clear. If you want to go walking, dear, it's delightful, it's delicious, it's still lovely. I understand the reason why you're sentimental, for so am I. It's delightful, it's delicious, it's still lovely. You can tell at a glance what a...
Did you ever wonder how Dinah got into your home? Well, imagine yourself hovering high above Manhattan. For more than 30 years, the networks have delivered their programs over a wire, known as a landline, which they've rented from the telephone company. Programs travel down the wire to the local television stations, which broadcast the signal to your home antenna. In cases where homes are obstructed by tall buildings or mountains, community antenna systems, known as CATV, provided a wire from a central antenna to your home. Today, however, new technologies and new delivery systems promise to change the structure of the television industry and our relationship with the television set.
I think the name of the game in television has changed. For a long time, the traditional broadcasters have resisted that change, but technology has forced them to have to face up to it. And we're now looking at services that will be delivered not only by cable, but by direct broadcast satellite, by scrambled over-the-air television, by cassettes and discs, by microwave, maybe even by laser. The world has changed completely, and there is a great scramble among the purveyors of television programming.
If the purveyors of television are scrambling, then the viewers of television must feel scrambled. Bombarded by an alphabet soup of initials and acronyms, the vocabulary of the new TV technologies requires a sort of electronic glossary for the uninitiated. Cable TV has advanced far beyond its original role as a community antenna system. The wire that brings you cable TV is strung on telephone poles or underground with utility lines. And in today's systems, that wire is capable of carrying up to 100 different program channels into your home. And it can also carry signals out of your home, allowing for two-way communication. Subscription television, known as STV, involves a regular broadcast television station which scrambles its signal. The home viewer has a special decoder box installed which unscrambles the signal for home viewing. Direct Broadcast Satellite, or DBS, is a proposed system that will allow signals to be transmitted directly from a satellite to a home rooftop receiving dish. This system differs from previous satellite technology in that it would require only a small 3-foot wide dish antenna rather than today's cumbersome 30-foot wide dish antennas. Video cassette recorders, or VCRs, use magnetic tape packaged in cassettes for recording and playing back television programs. While pre-recorded cassettes may be purchased, most users of VCRs use the sophisticated timers in the machines to record programs off the air and then view them at a later time. Video disc machines use records to play both pictures and sound. Different manufacturers' machines use different systems to play the video records. However, all disc machines have one thing in common. You can only purchase pre-recorded video discs, and you cannot record programs off the air. Consumers now find the market flooded with home video equipment. These new gadgets and machines have created a technological revolution in the world of television, which some historical analysts have compared to the development of the printing press. But some analysts of the television industry see it differently.
People think of the revolution as being a technological revolution. I think of it as a cultural revolution. The very big change in our lives of people paying for what they want to see on television and for how they use television. And I believe, as some of these television companies do, cable companies do, that cable is likely to be a bigger business than telephone.
You know, it wasn't too long ago that people were saying, 12 channels? My goodness, how could you possibly use 12 channels? And now we're talking about 54 channels, 100 channels, and we're building those systems. And it is the software, it is the programming children's programming, black programming, Spanish programming, news programming, religious programming, all kinds of unique information services that aren't available otherwise, but are available because of the diversity of channels, the multitude of outlets that cable television operates. That's the secret, and that's what's happening. I mean, that's what we're selling to consumers.
The programming that is sold to consumers is first sold to cable system operators at conventions scattered around the country. These cable TV conventions have grown from small gatherings of cable operators and equipment suppliers to lavish expositions showing the very latest in television programming. And today, television programming is not just entertainment. A wide variety of specialized channels offer program services never before available on TV.
Saying, hey, you can get more information than you get from the 3 networks right now, and it's not going to cost you much to get it. And then you take it one step further, and you say that information doesn't just have to be entertainment information. It can be two-way data. It will be the kind of thing that provides security service in your house while you're away. It can be the kind of things that will turn off your hot water heater after you go to work and turn it back on just before you come home. And I haven't even begun to touch on what happens when you tie that wire up with a computer at the home end, and you sit there and you type in, and you can get information back and forth. That's all there. It's all can come over the same wire that brings your cable television service. It's all being built right now on an economic model that's predicated on entertainment services. But the sky's the limit, and the impact on consumers has just begun to be felt.
The explosion in cable services really began in 1975, when RCA's SATCOM satellite gave cable TV programmers the ability to inexpensively send their programs across the country. However, television itself first became a possibility just 80 years before, beginning with Marconi's invention of the wireless telegraph. With the sending of that first radio signal through the air, a new method of communication was born.
The Johnson's Wax Program with Fibber McGee and Molly.
While radio had the country captivated, both Vladimir Zworykin and Philo Farnsworth were working on the seemingly fantastical idea of sending pictures as well as sound through the air.
This tube, which we call an image dissector, is the television transmitting tube. Used with the lens, this tube is to television what the microphone is to sound broadcasting.
By 1927, both Zworykin and Farnsworth had applied for patents. Central to the technical experiment of the late 20s and early 30s was the cartoon character Felix the Cat.
You laugh so much your sides will ache, your heart will go pitter-pat, watch and feel it, it's the wonderful cat.
He was wonderful, all right, especially for scientists who needed a willing model to sit long hours under hot lights. So Hardy Felix became a test pattern for the engineers as they worked toward perfecting picture resolution.
Paramount News takes you behind the scenes where television is being brought to perfection. Actual transmitting and receiving are filmed for the first time.
By the mid-1930s, RCA was producing 2 experimental programs a week in their research facility. Their ambitious experiments in television would lead to the creation of the National Broadcasting Corporation. Television was finally ready to premiere to the public at the 1939 World's Fair in New York City. Franklin Roosevelt became the first president to appear on television.
I hereby dedicate the World's Fair the New York World's Fair of 1939, and I declare it open to all mankind.
Fairgoers flocked to the RCA Pavilion, where they saw television for the first time, including a special set with a glass cabinet. Then World War II came, and television took a back seat to war production. After the war ended, television quickly took the country by storm. And in 5 years, the number of sets in the United States zoomed from just 6,000 to 15.5 million.
I bet Fran would buy some.
Let's call her in and see. You should try it.
Okay. Fran! Yeah? Well, what have we here? Lemonade stand. Well, how nice. Is it? Yours? Yes. Well, I hope...
As well as being one of the first programs on television, in 1954, Kukla, Fran, and Dolly became one of the first programs to appear in color.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
And in 1962, Telstar was launched.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just been informed that this baseball game is being seen in Europe right now over the Telstar satellite. Let's give all the baseball fans in Europe a big hello from Chicago.
Seven years later, in 1969, the streets emptied as Americans stayed glued to their television sets to watch live the first steps of man on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Now, we could see television live from anywhere.
At the Earth, right out our front window.
From watching men on the moon to playing space war at home, television has become part of the fabric of our daily lives.
And television is a very powerful medium. It hits you with a lot of very dramatic images and sounds at a time when you're not sitting there analyzing it with a clipboard and a pencil and observing what's going by. It hits you all at once. Now, if you ask yourselves, do you have a notion of what goes on? How many times have you been in an operating room while an operation was going on? How many times have you been in jail? How many times have you been able to share the intimate life of a prostitute or a policeman or something like that? Probably, if most of you are like me, the answer is not very often. And yet, we all have very clear-cut images of what goes on in the life of a prostitute, what goes on in an operating room, what goes on in jail, and so forth. Where do you get those images from? For most of us, they come from watching dramas, most of those dramas coming through the television screen.
George Gerbner, Dean of the Annenberg School of Communications at the University of Pennsylvania, has been studying the lessons we learn from television for the past 14 years.
Our studies that have been going on about 14 years now try to look at that world into which our children are born and into which all of us live, as long as we live. And ask the question, what kind of a world is it? Who are the people? What do they do? What kind of experience do we have living in that world? And what kind of lessons about the real world do we derive from our experience in the world of television?
Our experience in the world of television, it appears, tends to warp our view of reality. Gerbner's studies show that very old and very young people are underrepresented on television as compared to their real percentage of the population. Heavy viewers of television tend to view old people in a negative light as compared to the lighter viewers of television. Women are most often shown to be under the age of 35. Men are most often shown to be over the age of 35. As women age on TV, they become less successful. As men age on TV, they become more successful. Also, heavy viewers of television overestimate the number of times police use violence in their work. And they overestimate the number of people in society who are involved in crime.
Many more of the heavy viewers than the light viewers living in the same neighborhood. The same age, the same sex, the same income, the same occupation. Many more of the heavy viewers will say, yes, I bought a new lock. Yes, I bought a new watchdog. Yes, I bought a new gun for protection last week. They live in a more mean and dangerous world for all practical purposes than their next-door neighbors who watch less television. So you get a sense of insecurity, which implies dependence on the authorities. It also implies, and this is probably the most disturbing part of it, it also implies that insecure people, those who have been cultivated, those whose notions about the world and the danger in the world has been cultivated by the frequency of violence on television more than other people, will accept repression, even welcome repression, if it comes in the name of security.
Police, don't move. Now, wait a minute. I'm the superintendent here. Where's Don Wilson? I don't know. I was waiting for him. With a shotgun?
Violence on television has been an issue since the early days of the medium. What is the relationship between violence on TV and violence in society?
The question that's usually asked is, if you watch violence on television, or if you watch violence on television, will it make you violent? Now, really what we're asking is, what motivates people to be violent, and to what degree does the television experience of observing violence over and over again motivate you to be violent? Now, there are many models of how people learn, and one way people learn is by imitation, so that I have no doubt that for some people, watching violence on television gives them something to imitate, so they can imitate it and be violent. But for most of us, what motivates us to be violent is something in the environment that motivates us to be violent.
All right, hold it! Let's stay right where you are. Stay right where you are! Get off of me, jerk! What are you doing? Hey, leave him alone!
And what happens is that you see Kojak, you see the car chase, you see Starsky and Hutch, you see people engaging in fisticuffs and karate and so on, and then as you're watching in this nice, comfortable position in your house with the warmth of the fireplace and the dog at your feet, at that moment you're hit in the face with a commercial. So that at the very moment that your emotions are starting to be aroused because you see violence, and you may want to turn away from it, at that moment you're hit with a commercial. So that Lysol toilet bowl cleaner is coupled with the car chase or the karate chop or whatever it may be, and what happens is that our emotional reaction to violence is reduced from horror and shunning to trivialization. The social situation within which that violence is shown, for most of us, trivialize violence, and that's one reason why it has to be stepped up all the time, because we get used to it. And what formerly attracted our attention now no longer attracts it.
With television, it's more like a tribal religion with a very powerful electronic base. A child is inserted into a home in which television is the constant environment. It's on 6.5 hours a day. By the time children learn to read, by the time children learn to speak, they will have absorbed 30 to 40,000 little stories a year. Commercials, news, fiction and drama, it's all the same to them. And that envelopes the viewer in a new environment of storytelling. Television tells most of the stories to most of the people most of the time. And whoever tells the stories of a culture can control the way in which children grow up, the way in which society runs.
Almost without our realizing it, television has assumed the major role as storyteller to our children. How different is that role from that of a parent reading a story to a child?
Apologists for the medium of television will frequently say, why are people upset about violence on television? Look at a story like Hansel and Gretel. An old woman wants to bake children and turn them into cookies, and Hansel, in order to defend himself, pushes this old woman into the oven and cooks her. What could be more violent than that? So why are we upset about violence on television? In other words, equating the storytelling experience and the reading experience to what happens on television. But this is such a simplistic way of looking at the issue. When you tell a child a story, you look at the child, you monitor the child. If your voice is too heavy or too rough, then you quiet it and you make it gentle. You see the kid is shivering and crying, you cool it and you tell the story in a more modified form. Or if you're reading to a child, you sit the kid on your lap and you cuddle him, you talk to him. It's an exchange of body warmth as well as an exchange of information. You're not cutting off the top of somebody's head and pouring information into it. The reading to a child experience is vastly different. Now, when a child is old enough to read for himself or to read for herself, that too is vastly different, because you can't read a page of print without paying attention to it. If you don't pay attention to it, you hit the bottom of the page, you've got to start over again. It happens to me all the time, so I know it. Of course, when you watch television, it doesn't work that way at all. It simply imposes itself upon your mind's eye as it enters your visual field, and you accept it uncritically without paying attention. A vastly different experience in terms of reading versus television, and a very different social experience, whether a kid is interacting with a machine or interacting with a person who monitors him and cares about him.
Television has changed the social experiences of not only our children, but of all members of the family. And it influences the ways in which we interact with each other.
When the medium was first launched, we were told that it would bring families together, that the television set would be sort of like the central hearth around which the family gathered. But, you know, today in the United States, more than 40% of us have more than 2 sets in the home. And many, many, many families have 3, 4, and 5 sets in the home. One in the kitchen, one in the family room, the children have a set in their own room, and so on. People watch television alone. It's mainly an isolating experience in American society. Moreover, the interaction goes from you to the screen. So even if you're sitting there watching in unison with other people, the dominating presence in the room is the television screen.
Dodgers for the lineup change today, so Garvey is on deck.
Our experience in the world of television influences the way in which our families come together. It molds our view of the world around us, and it shapes the way in which our children grow up. Will the new TV technologies make life different?
There's going to be a significant impact in the direction of more of what we have now, not in a direction of changing what we have now. Communication devices are cultural arms of existing society. They do what the existing structure of power in society wants them to do, because they are supported by, they're owned, managed, and conducted by the established powers in society. And in our society, the established powers are essentially the major business and industrial corporations. They will have a more efficient, a more highly streamlined cultural arm that will penetrate into our homes and into our lives and into our businesses much more than ever before.
One place where television has penetrated into people's lives more than ever before is Columbus, Ohio. The Warner Cable Company chose Columbus as the first market for Cube, Warner's brand name for a technologically sophisticated two-way cable system. Since its inception in 1977, Cube has been offering its subscribers 30 different channels to choose from. But the most unique feature of the Cube system is its interactive ability, or the chance to talk back to your television set.
In different ways. And goal to goal, too. You don't have the chance. So here are your options, and they are second and long, because it is 5 yards or more, second and long, inside the 10-yard line, to run outside the middle, play action, pass medium, touch now.
Touch now.
Getting the ball outside.
I think it's
In this interactive football game, viewers touch in on their Cube consoles to vote for their guess on what the next play will be.
He's a good one to have do it. That's right. Oh, this one was close. 31% they want the run outside, but you see there were some other plays there that people were liking. There it is, the end around. Cornelius Green, he's got running room. Good blocking. This is going to be a touchdown for Columbus. Beautiful.
The Cube subscriber's TV set is linked to a central computer, which scans each home every 6 seconds. The computer tallies how viewers have answered interactive questions, finds out which channels viewers are tuned to for billing purposes, and watches for burglaries and fires in homes that have security hookups. For more than 3 years, Becky and Bob Appleyard and their son Robbie have subscribed to Cube.
Cal calls them in a moment. First, this is Today on NBC.
About the first thing in the morning, you turn the TV on and have the Today Show going.
But now, American Motors makes buying an 82...
Roxanna Broom. She's written a new book.
And it just kind of goes till we go back to sleep as far as whether we're watching it or not, it's on.
What's it take for a woman to make it in the business world? Well,
I'm finding
have smarts and
more now that it's more annoying and distracting to me to have it on constantly. But it's kind of ignored until Robbie goes down for a nap, and then we go back to children's programming later in the afternoon. The cable TV because you have Nickelodeon, which is children's programming, that is on most of the day. And I can take Robbie out whenever I want to when it's nice and don't have to be confined because this is the time slot that program is on. My son Robbie won't sit still for me to read a story to him. So with on some of the programs for the children's programming, they will go through a story where with the animation it'll catch his eye and he'll listen to the story and just be thrilled. So I enjoy it for that reason. I've used the interactive part of Cube to receive recipes. They've done a lot of different programming where there are microwave recipes I was really interested in receiving and other recipes as well.
Ta-da! Isn't that beautiful?
To receive this recipe, touch now.
TV's on about approximately 80 hours a week, and when I get home, I generally want to watch the news around 6.
I'm Steve Schatz with the 2-Minute Newscast. General Motors, regarded as the healthiest of the American automakers, is planning to lay off 13,000...
Before we move...
Cube has something on, like an interactive program, something like that. I want to usually partake in it.
Assuming that your school system is reasonably well run these days, do you feel that spending more money per student will mean a better education for those youngsters? If your answer is yes, please press button number 1. If your answer is no, please press button number 2, and would you please respond now. 31% think that spending more money means a better education. 63% say it will not mean a better education. And 6% of our Cube system viewers are undecided.
Yeah, I use the computer service generally on Fridays and Saturday evenings. We have many different levels of games you can play, newspapers you can access, all types of government publications. It's just virtually endless.
Fire, Robbie. Push the button. Push the button.
Some of the games there's on there, Robbie enjoys quite a bit, and he has a lot of fun with.
Push the button.
We haven't gone out to movies for almost 2 years now because of the Cube system.
Right in the kitchen?
There is. We've had friends over a number of times, and they've enjoyed here sitting down and watching movies, not having to pay the price of admission and pay for popcorn and everything. You can get up from the couch and go over and to the refrigerator and rate it whenever you want.
Television has become a member of the family in the Appleyard home. As more and more services are offered by cable TV, direct broadcast satellite, subscription television, video cassettes, and video discs, the role of this new member of the family is bound to grow. But as in any household, there are going to be growing pains in the new age of television.
There's so many fascinating things that become possible when four technologies that we once thought of as discrete have started to run together and really become, in effect, one technology. Cable, computers, telephone, and the satellite. And when you put any two of them together, or three, you get a remarkable new delivery system.
One of the proposed cable channels will be devoted exclusively to interactive programs that are designed to involve the viewer.
UTV. It's a whole new view for cable with a whole new concept in programming. We call it involving. You'll call it incredible.
It is really a quite wonderful new world that is developing out there. But as wonderful as it is, it's also frightening.
What frightens some people about two-way television is the possible invasion of our privacy.
Think of it. Viewers will play along, phone or mail in, learn how to, or buy what they see, and will document their response.
I believe that there is a legitimate concern on privacy in view of the new technologies like cable. The cable operator will know a great deal about that household, what it watches, products it's interested in, because it's going to turn more and more to transactions. And I think that the consumer should be protected here.
Those transactions will include shopping at home, such as this experimental American Express television catalog.
A rugged, lightweight AMF moped that will get you as far as 170 miles on a gallon of gas. They've been using them in Europe for years. There's just one simple control, plus two brake levers. And if you turn off the 49cc motor, it pedals as easily as a bicycle. $349.
I believe that there should be a requirement put on the cable operator by the government that he inform the public of what information will be collected, how it will be used, to whom will it be turned over. I think that the public should have access to what records are kept on them by the cable operator, should have the ability to correct those records, and finally, I think there should be an expectation of confidentiality. Now, all these were principles that were laid down in privacy legislation by the Carter administration. It would be applicable to medical records, to certain credit records, to insurance records. I believe the same principles that I have enunciated should be applicable here in the cable field, and that they should come by legislation.
Holding a somewhat different view on the need for legislation is Mark Fowler, chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. He's been leading an effort to remove regulations from the television industry.
The countervailing consideration that's involved here is if too many strictures are imposed in the name of privacy, the strictures could be so onerous as to thwart or discourage the development of these new technologies that could serve people. And that's the balance. And it's a very difficult problem. The answer is, there are no clear answers. But are we concerned? Absolutely. And would we act if the appropriate day and time came that it became a real issue? It's not yet. I think this agency or Congress would act.
What I want you to do is, if you would like a copy of the recipe that Scott's about to do for us, you need but touch button number 1 on your Cube console, and you'll see the flashing Touch Now sign come up. It will just come up and stay there. It won't flash on and off. And I must remind you that you'll no longer be anonymous. What you're allowing us to do, basically, is to draw your name out of the computer. We'll make a mailing list, and we'll send you a copy of the recipe right to your doorstep. How about that?
Having your name drawn out of a computer to receive a recipe may not seem like an invasion of your privacy, but that same computer, if abused, could track your votes on other issues as well.
I'd like to ask people a very basic question, and that is, what effect do you think Reaganomics will have on the economy? Do you think it will, number 1, greatly help? Number 2, somewhat help? Number 3, make no difference? Number 4, somewhat hurt. Number 5, greatly hurt.
Personal privacy is not the only issue that concerns observers of the new television technologies. In what ways will electronic voting change our lives?
There's something very attractive about instant polling. It sounds like you can get public opinion instantly. The real danger of that, where politics is concerned, conduct of government, is that a congressman who may have studied an issue quite thoroughly may find that he's undermined by an instant poll taken in his community, where people are not as informed on the issues as he, and that their vote in this instant plebiscite is not the vote he would have cast. And then he's put in the position of having to cast the vote that his constituency would have him cast or wishes cast. That's one danger of it. The bigger danger of it is that it's really a gimmick. It's a showbiz gimmick, the way it's used, and the way probably it will be used. We don't know how big the sample is in those instant polls, nor do we know who it is that's voting. My experience when I visited the Cube system in Columbus, and I went to a number of homes and saw the people, I found that it was the young people, 3-year-old children, who loved to hit that button for the vote.
On one of the programs they had, there was a thing as to whether or not you'd be willing to go and review a movie for Cube. And I didn't know it. My son punched in that we would love to go and review a movie. And the next thing I knew, I had a phone call from Cube asking me if I would be willing to come. So when I checked around and found out that Will had done it, it turned out it was an R-rated movie. So he couldn't go. So my husband and I went and picked up the tickets and went and saw the movie. And a couple days later, I got a phone call from Cube informing me that the reviewing and the questioning on the film would be done on live television, which was a real thrill, because that meant my husband wouldn't do that. So I had to go down to Cube and sit there and review the movie. And so I said, I don't know how many other things he's punched in on for us, but that was the one that involved me that I wasn't real excited about. To start, it was fun. It ended up being a lot of fun doing that.
Let me tell you a story of my own experience. In Channels, we had an article on the dangers of the invasion of privacy by two-way cable. And I was called one day by the Cable News Network to talk about my magazine. And they said, Mr. Brown, in Channels magazine, you have an article saying that people ought to be frightened about two-way cable because of the invasion of privacy aspect. And I said, yes, we have such an article. And they said, okay, we're going to take a poll of the people in Columbus now on our Cube system and see how they feel about that. And so they took the poll, and about 70% of the people, in a minute you get the answer, and about 70% of the people said, no, they weren't worried at all about the invasion of privacy, and 30% said they more or less were worried about it. So they said, you see, people who have two-way cable aren't worried about this, and you're raising a bum issue. The fact is, we don't know how many people were out there voting in that poll in the first place. Worse than that, we don't know whether they're giving us the correct answer. We have to take it on faith. What if 70% of the people said, yes, they were worried about the invasion of privacy, and they simply reported the answer they wanted to report? And that's one of the real dangers of that kind of polling, and it's one that makes me very nervous.
Will the home of the future be invaded by two-way television? Will instant plebiscites turn democracy into electronic mob rule? Will the cultural arms of big business reach deep into the lives of unknowing consumers? Or will the conveniences of the electronic cottage outweigh any disadvantages?
My great dream and fantasy is being able to punch in and have my groceries automatically ordered for me. I detest going to the grocery store. And it seems to me like we already have the technology to be able to, through the phone lines and through the cable lines, have the items brought up on the screen and then order it and have it prepared and ready for me to pick up. It's even possible that you could have it automatically deducted from your checking account or your MasterCharge or Visa.
In the future, I'd like to see home banking as one of the very prime things that's coming up, and also home shopping, and possibly down the road energy management.
I would like to use the TV in the future for shopping, to do some of my son's shopping for convenience, because it's hard to take him shopping, and it saves a lot of time, which seems very important to me right now. And I would like to use it for banking, because that seems like a trip you're making constantly that I would like to do without. And it would be nice to have it for temperature controls in the house.
How much will these services cost? While systems vary from town to town, basic cable service typically costs about $9 per month. Adding interactive two-way service, $3 more. A subscription movie channel, $9. A premium channel like one of the new cultural arts channels, $12. A special one-time only event like a heavyweight boxing match, $10. Home security, $17. And if your son or daughter does their homework on the cable's computer system, that costs $5 an hour, so let's say $15 for the month. So it is not unlikely that some people might find themselves paying $75 a month for the services they'll receive over the cable wire.
Cable is likely to be a bigger business than telephone. When telephone came into people's homes, it had a little nickel coin box, and people put in 25 cents a week. Today, people pay. They call all over the world and call all over the country, and pay $100, $150 a month, and don't think much about that it's part of living. And I think cable is going to come to be that way with us too.
There's a perception that cable television may, in fact, eliminate free television or broadcast television and substitute a pay system, and that is not the case. I'd like to point out simply that free television is obviously not free. It's supported by advertising, which is passed on in the cost of everything we buy as a form of tax, which everyone pays. And that will continue. There is no threat whatsoever to the continuance of that service. Cable television and, of course, the interactive and advanced services that we're discussing are supplementary, they're advanced, and those who wish to have them will have that option. It's simply an option.
Those who wish to have the advanced services of cable TV will receive many benefits and conveniences in their lives. But what of those who cannot afford the wealth of services offered by the new TV technologies?
There's much to be said for the revolution in people paying for television and television services. The downside of that is that people who can't afford to pay are going to be deprived. And this is going to divide the country, probably, into information haves and information have-nots.
Our society is based on voting with dollars. Food, automobiles, and any other goods or services I can think of are provided on the basis of payment and distributed more to those who wish to pay and less to those who do not wish to pay or cannot pay. And I think this cable television service is no different from any other commodity in our economy. It costs money and someone has to pay for it.
I think it's possible that we may have to go to a system of cable stamps or information stamps, just as we do food stamps. I know that sounds absurd, but the idea has been raised, and it seems to make some sense, because a lot of these new media, two-way cable and all that, are going to be tied into large computer banks and information centers. Obviously, there's going to be an inequity in the society.
Information has always been power. It's been social power and it's been economic power. And this is truer today than it ever was. And what we have now is the possibility through these delivery systems which ask you to pay for information, the prospect of a new stratification system, or let's say the exaggeration of an old stratification system in the United States, where you have the information poor and the information rich. You get the information not only if you have the money to pay for it, but if you have the background to know that it is information that you ought to have.
Now we're talking about an additional 5%, putting their cost drop.
Bear in mind that when you have a cable system that has 100 channels on it, that really does sound like you have 100 different voices coming at you, and you can select from a panoply of 100 different sources. But in fact, they're like tines of a rake. They all meet at a handle, one handle. The guy who owns the cable system controls those 100 channels, and he can control what goes out over those 100 channels. And if there are 200 different program services up there on the satellite, the guy who holds the rake can pick of those 200 the 100 that most agree with his political philosophy, for example. So this is a real concern. There's a great chance, a terrible chance, that the whole that we are drifting towards a kind of oligarchy of away from democracy to an oligarchy controlled by large corporations.
The federal government has been concerned about the control of broadcasting since it passed the Federal Communications Act in 1927. The act states that the airwaves, which are a scarce resource, belong to the people, and that broadcasters will be licensed to operate in the public interest as a public trustee. Now that we can receive television by wire, satellite, cassette, and disc, and not just the public airwaves, a controversy has arisen over whether television should continue to be regulated by the government or if it should be deregulated and left to the fluctuations of the open marketplace.
The role and purpose of regulating the television industry has been to ensure that it does operate in the public interest. There is a need to license television, because otherwise there would be chaos if everybody tried to get on Channel 4 or 2. The government decided in 1927 and 34 upon a scheme of licensing that is public trustee. You're licensed for a short term to operate in the public interest. And so the regulation has been to try to ensure that public interest operation.
Well, when we talk about unregulating, we talk about, as the president has, removing the government from interfering with the people's lives and commerce to the maximum extent possible. And I believe that. I've said that I'm a Reagan supporter. I'm not a closet Reaganite. I'm sitting on the front steps.
I think we're really pursuing lunatic policies in this country where these new media are concerned. Of course, I understand that there is deregulation fever in Washington, and that there's much to be said for getting government off the back of business and all that sort of thing. But deregulating railroads and the trucking industries and the airlines is a lot different from deregulating broadcast media.
There are basically 2 points to be made. One, on a First Amendment basis, I believe it is wrong for the government to be involved in content regulation of broadcasters. And 2, I believe that the marketplace is a better mechanism for assuring that the kinds of programming that the people would like to see and hear are indeed the kinds of programming that they receive from broadcasters.
I think that in view of the fact that the regulation has been largely ineffectual, has been a charade, that it is time to move off that system. However, the one place where I disagree with Chairman Fowler and others who simply turn to the marketplace is that the marketplace won't supply everything. I think you can see that if you look at radio. There are over 8,000 commercial radio stations, so you have now an abundance of radio. But if you depended upon those 8,000 radio stations for your entire public service, you would find that it was deficient.
There's no regulation that has been put in by government and has not been put in because some industry group wanted it in. The existing regulations protected the existing interests. Deregulation means that a new set of interests will be protected by some mechanism that is yet to be decided.
In this decade, there will be basic changes made as to the public trustee nature of broadcasting, as to cable, and whether it has the ability to control all 100 channels of the new cable system, as to the role of the telephone company in information, And on all these issues, so important to this nation, there is strong industry participation. The industries are involved, are militant, and are putting great deal of pressure upon the legislators and upon Congress. The public is largely uninformed and indifferent, and that doesn't bode well for decisions that will always serve the public interest.
Television has grown to be a major player in our lives. It has brought us together in times of national triumph and tragedy. And yet at the same time, it has driven us apart, even in our own homes. Of its role in the future, only one thing is certain. It will be larger than ever before, and it will have the power to both enhance and diminish the quality of our lives.
When you look at the public interest, convenience, and necessity, that means not just you and me and those of us who are in the cohort on the face of the earth at this moment. It means the future generations and your children and my children and our grandchildren and future generations who come and they inherit the world that they never made. And we have to make the kind of a broadcasting system that will not contaminate what I call the thought environment for future generations, but on the contrary, will bring out not the worst in people, but the best in us.
Tomorrow night, it's A Blow Upon a Bruise on the next Brideshead Revisited. Tune in Channel 2 for a great performance Monday night at 9. Joanne Woodward debuts as a TV director with Come Along With Me, about a widow's determination to probe the supernatural. Watch American Playhouse Tuesday night at 9. The 1822 slave rebellion, led by freedman Denmark Vesey in Charleston, South Carolina, is dramatized in A House Divided, Denmark Vesey's Rebellion, Wednesday night at 8. Now stay tuned for the conclusion of The Flame Trees of Thika on Masterpiece Theater, next on Channel 2.